All right, let's finally settle the string gauge war. That whole heavy strings like Stevie Ray Vaughan versus ultralights like Billy Gibbons debate. It's the wrong question. As an engineer, I see one crucial factor that everyone misses. Understand this and you'll nail your perfect gauge forever. You see, so much of this debate is funded by emotion, not facts. Trying to copy heroes and struggling with heavy gauges, going super light and finding tuning stability. These decisions often ignore what's factually best for you. Being an engineer for nearly 50 years, the first principle is picking the right part for the task at hand. And strings are no different. It's all about understanding the compromises. There's a reason that so many string sizes exist. For different hands, different guitars, different styles. So today we're cutting through that noise. I'm laying down the practical design-based factors to give you the right choice. All right, first things first, what about tone? You hear it debated all the time. Now, in an acoustic guitar, string gauge is hugely important for tone. Think about it. Strings vibrating, the wooden top moving, that is the sound source. That's your amplifier right there. Heavier strings will generally give you more volume and a fuller, bassier tone, while lighter strings will be quieter and brighter. So, for acoustics, gauge is a major tone and volume decision. Okay, so what about electric guitars? Look, let's get real. From an engineering perspective here, yes, technically different string gauges do sound slightly different. They have different mass, they have different tension, a slightly different harmonic content, but how much differences are we really talking about? Well, when you switch to a gauge to, say, from a set of 10s to 9s or from 10s to 11, the measurable differences specific frequencies might only be around 1, maybe 2 decibels. Now, compare that tiny amount to the tone controls on your amplifier. A typical modern amp EQ often gives you plus or minus 12 dB on the bass, mids, and treble. That's a 24 decibel range to play with. And just so you know, every 3 dB is double the power. So that 24 decibel range on your amp represents a massive 251 times the power difference in those frequencies that you're adjusting. So back to that 1 or 2 decibel difference from the string gauge. When you've got a 24 decibel plus tool sitting right there on your amp, honestly, from a practical view, the string's tonal contribution gets dwarfed. It's almost insignificant in the grand scheme of shaping your electric tone. You can make way bigger tonal changes with a tiny nudge of an EQ knob than by swapping string gauges. So my advice for electric players, don't obsess too much about tone when choosing your gauge. Focus on how the strings feel and play. As you'll see, there are much more important things that the right gauge affects on electric guitars. For acoustic players, though, remember that gauge is a big part of your volume and your fundamental tone. If you play acoustics through an amp or PA, you gain back some control over tone. Okay, so if chasing tone isn't the main driver for electric string gauge, what is? Well, a lot of it comes down to your playing style, your hands, your preferences. Let's look at a few common scenarios. What if you like to strum hard? Maybe you're really digging into rhythm playing. In that case, a heavier gauge is generally your friend. Why? Because heavier strings have more tension. When you hit them hard, they're less likely to flap around wildly and smack against the frets further down the neck. That's annoying fret slap. That kills your sustain. They just feel more solid under aggressive strumming. And on acoustics, like we said, you get more volume and a deeper, less thin sound. So just remember, going heavier puts more tension on the guitar, so you might need a quick truss rod adjustment. Now, what if you've got that gorilla grip? You tend to naturally press down really hard on the strings when you fret notes. Again, heavier gauges can actually help. Lighter strings have less tension, and if you press down too hard, it's really easy to bend the note sharp without even meaning to. So heavier strings resist that extra pressure much better, helping you play more in tune. Okay, so what about the opposite? Are you a beginner just starting out? Or maybe you're a shredder playing lots and lots of fast passages? Or you just love bending notes, big soaring blues bends? For all of you, lighter strings are often the way to go. They require less finger pressure, making them easier to play, especially for beginners building finger strength. They bend much more easily, which is great for bluesy styles or shred techniques. And if you're playing long gigs or practice sessions, lighter strings mean less fatigue and much more endurance. So the trade-offs, especially on acoustics, can be a thinner tone and much less volume. So finally, what if you're a general rock or blues player doing a bit of everything? Rhythm, riffs, bends? Well, then medium gauge strings, often sets like 10 to 46 on electrics, are usually the sweet spot for you. They offer a great compromise, a balance between solid enough for rhythm work, but still bendable enough for leads without killing your fingers. Now, they aren't as easy to bend as super lights, especially during a long set, but they offer a fantastic middle ground. Hey, just quickly, if you're finding this breakdown helpful so far, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button below. It really helps the channel reach more guitarists. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more practical guitar tips just like this. All right, let's quickly recap some hard facts. The general characteristics of the main string gauge categories are thin gauges, like 7s, 8s, or 9s on electric. These take a light touch. They bend super easy, which is great for some styles, but they also go sharp easily if you press too hard. On acoustics, they generally have the lowest volume and a thinner, brighter sound. Great for ease of play and big bends. Medium gauges, often 10s on electrics. The classic compromise and probably the best choice if you only have one guitar to cover various styles. They offer a balanced feel, solid enough for rhythm, bendable enough for lead. On acoustics, you get balanced volume and tone, not too thin, not too boomy. Now on heavy gauges, 11s, 12s, or even higher, these are the best suited for strong hands or players who really dig in hard. They offer the best dynamic range. You can play softly or really hit them hard and they respond well. They feel very solid under the fingers, but can be difficult for long playing sessions or complex bends. They're also really useful if you like to drop tune your guitars to lower keys, as the added tension keeps the strings from feeling floppy. On acoustics, they give you the loudest volume and the strongest bass response. Now here's something crucial that often gets overlooked when talking about string feel. Scale length. What's that? Well, it's the vibrating length of the string measured from the guitar's nut to the saddle on the bridge. So why does it matter? Okay, because the same string gauge tuned to the same pitch, a guitar with a longer scale length will have more tension than a guitar with a shorter scale length. The classic example is a Fender Stratocaster versus a Gibson Les Paul. A typical Strat has a longer scale length, usually 25.5 inches. A typical Les Paul has a shorter scale length, usually 24.75 inches. So, if you put the exact same set of strings, say 10 gauge, on both guitars, and tune them both to standard tuning, the strings on the Les Paul will feel slightly slinkier or easier to bend than the exact same strings on the Strat, simply because there's less tension due to that shorter scale length. It's a small difference, but it's noticeable. So keep your guitar scale length in mind when comparing how strings feel. Oh, and before I forget to mention, I've put together a free string gauge selector guide based on all the principles I've discussed. It's a nice chart. It walks you through finding your best fit. This download link is right there in the description box below, so be sure to grab it. Totally free. So remember, settling the string gauge war isn't about finding one winner. As we covered, it's about balancing playability, how the strings feel under your fingers, tension, and yes, tone, especially on acoustics. then matching that to your style and the guitar. So don't forget that changing gauges might require a quick setup adjustment for best performance. So there's truly no one size fits all, especially if you like different playing styles, which may be a great excuse to own multiple guitars, right? So the key is using these facts as your guide and doing some experimentation to find what truly works best for you. Thanks for watching. If this video helped clear things up, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. So, what's your current go-to string gauge and why? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you want more practical guitar content like this, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out. Check out the suggested video by clicking on the image above. See you in the next video and keep playing.